The billionaire refused to shake Darius Holloway's hand in front of 300 people. It happened beneath the glass ceiling of the Hallberg Innovation Center during a ceremony celebrating the 30th anniversary of Hallberg Dynamics. Cameras surrounded the stage. Investors filled the front rows. Behind them sat executives, engineers, government officials, and employees wearing silver badges stamped with the company's new slogan, 30 Years of Vision. At the center of the stage stood billionaire Lucian Hallberg, dressed in a tailored black suit and smiling for the photographers beside a scale model of the company's newest automated freight system. Lucian was 62, silver-haired, and still physically imposing. Business magazines described him as the solitary genius who had transformed a failing machine shop into an industrial technology empire operating in 28 countries. The anniversary film shown minutes earlier had repeated that story. It began with a photograph of Lucian standing alone inside a small warehouse. It described how he had designed the first Hallberg loading mechanism with nothing but courage, instinct, and a borrowed toolbox. It did not mention Darius. When the master of ceremonies invited former employees to join Lucian for a commemorative photograph, Darius rose from the final row. Several people turned to look at him. He was 58, black, tall, and quietly dressed in a dark brown suit that had been pressed carefully but was several years old. A narrow scar crossed the back of his right hand. He carried no company badge and no invitation bearing his name. The security staff had admitted him only after an elderly retired engineer confirmed that Darius had once worked at the original Hallberg plant. Darius walked toward the stage. Lucian's smile faded before Darius reached the stairs. The master of ceremonies hesitated. "Sir, this photograph is for former executive leadership." Darius stopped at the edge of the stage. "I was told former founders would be recognized." A ripple passed through the audience. Lucian stepped toward the microphone. "There appears to be some confusion," he said pleasantly. "Mr. Holloway worked in our early fabrication department." Darius looked at him. "I designed the first loading system." The pleasant expression disappeared from Lucian's face. Several cameras shifted toward them. Lucian descended one step, lowering his voice while maintaining the appearance of a smile. "This is neither the time nor place. It became the place when your film called my work yours. You were compensated for your employment. I was promised ownership." Lucian extended his arm, not to shake Darius's hand, but to direct him away from the stage. "Security will help you find the exit." Darius did not move. The audience had become completely silent. A young reporter near the aisle raised her camera. Perhaps recognizing how the scene would appear, the master of ceremonies whispered to Lucian. The billionaire's expression tightened. Then he extended his right hand toward Darius with theatrical politeness. "Thank you for your contribution." Darius looked down at the offered hand. Before he could respond, Lucian noticed the grease-darkened scar across Darius's fingers. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. He withdrew his hand. "We should continue the program." The rejection was small enough that Lucian might later deny it, but everyone near the stage saw it. Darius lowered his arm. "You have spent 30 years refusing more than my hand," he said. Lucian turned toward security. 2 guards approached. Darius allowed them to escort him through the hall. He did not resist. He did not shout. As he passed the enormous illuminated company timeline, he stopped for 1 second beneath the year Hallberg Dynamics had been founded. The timeline displayed Lucian's photograph. The space beside him was empty. Darius looked at it, then continued toward the exit. Outside, rain had begun falling across the plaza. A woman followed him from the building. Her name was Naomi Greer, 51, an attorney specializing in corporate ownership disputes. She had attended the anniversary ceremony because Hallberg Dynamics was preparing a major public offering, and her firm represented a pension fund considering an investment. "Mr. Holloway," she called. Darius stopped beneath the stone overhang. "If you're a reporter, I have nothing to say. I'm an attorney." "That is usually more expensive." Naomi ignored the remark. "You said Lucian Hallberg promised you ownership." "He did." Do you have evidence? Darius looked through the glass doors at the celebration continuing inside. I have the promise. That is not what I asked. No, he said. It isn't. He stepped into the rain. Naomi followed him to the curb. Halberg Dynamics is about to sell shares to the public. If its founder concealed an ownership agreement, that becomes more than a private grievance. Darius opened the door of an old gray sedan. You saw how easily he removed me from his anniversary. I also saw his face when you said you designed the first system. Darius paused. Naomi handed him her card. People do not look frightened by lies they can disprove. He took the card but said nothing. 32 years earlier, Halberg Dynamics did not exist. There was only Halberg Industrial Repair, a failing workshop owned by Lucian's father, Leopold Halberg. The business repaired conveyor motors, loading platforms, and agricultural machinery for warehouses along the river. Lucian was 30 then, ambitious and recently returned from business school. He understood finance, sales, and presentation. He did not understand machines. Darius was 26. He had learned mechanical engineering inside his uncle's garage before earning a technical degree at night. He worked days repairing industrial systems and spent evenings designing a safer loading platform for freight depots. Existing hydraulic lifts failed frequently. They were slow, unstable under uneven loads, and dangerous when pressure fluctuated. Darius developed a synchronized control mechanism that redistributed weight automatically across 4 lifting arms. He built the first prototype from discarded components inside Halberg Industrial Repair. Lucian saw it during a night visit to the workshop. What is that? He asked. A loading platform that doesn't tilt when the weight shifts. Does it work? Darius placed 3 steel drums on one side. The platform adjusted and remained level. Lucian walked around it twice. Who else has seen this? My supervisor. He said the company can't afford development. Lucian looked toward the darkened office where unpaid invoices covered his father's desk. What would it take? New valves, a control unit, machining time, and a proper test site. How much? At least $20,000. Halberg Industrial Repair had less than $6,000 available and debts far beyond that. Lucian smiled. Then we need someone who knows how to find money. That night became the beginning of their partnership. Darius developed the technology. Lucian found investors. They worked in the same warehouse, often sleeping on opposite sides of the office during long testing weeks. Darius corrected mechanical failures. Lucian convinced freight companies to watch demonstrations. When a test platform collapsed under an overloaded container, Darius pulled Lucian away seconds before the steel frame struck the floor. The scar across Darius's hand came from that accident. Their first major contract came from Bexley Freight Cooperative. The cooperative agreed to purchase 6 platforms if Darius could reduce the loading time by 20%. He redesigned the control sequence in 9 days. The system reduced loading time by 34%. Bexley placed an order large enough to save the workshop from bankruptcy. That evening, Lucian poured cheap whiskey into 2 chipped cups and placed a handwritten agreement on the workbench. The paper stated that Lucian Halberg and Darius Holloway were equal creators of the synchronized loading system. If a new company formed around the invention, Lucian would receive 60% and Darius 40%. Lucian explained that the unequal division reflected the capital he expected to raise. Darius accepted. I don't need half, he said. I need my name and enough control to stop people from making the machines unsafe. Lucian signed. Darius signed beneath him. Their supervisor, Warren Pike, witnessed both signatures. The agreement remained inside a red project folder in Leopold Halberg's office. 6 months later, Leopold died from a stroke. Lucian inherited the repair company and immediately incorporated Halberg Dynamics. Darius expected the ownership agreement to be transferred into formal shares. Lucian delayed. The first investors, he explained, were uncomfortable with complicated founder arrangements. Banks wanted one controlling owner. The patent attorney recommended listing the invention temporarily under the company name. Temporarily, Lucian repeated. Darius trusted him. He continued improving the design. Halberg Dynamics expanded quickly. The synchronized loading platform became the H1 balance lift, marketed as Lucian Halberg's revolutionary invention. Darius protested when the first brochure omitted his name. Lucian called it a marketing decision. Customers want one story, he said. A clear founder, a clear vision. What story do I get? You get 40% when the financing closes. The financing closed. Darius received nothing. When he confronted Lucian again, the billionaire-in-waiting claimed the handwritten agreement required validation from the new corporate attorneys. The red folder had supposedly disappeared during the move from the old workshop. Warren Pike had retired suddenly and moved out of state. Lucian offered Darius a promotion to chief mechanical supervisor and a significant salary increase. Darius refused. I am not asking for a better job inside my own company. Lucian's response changed their relationship forever. It is not your company until you prove it. The sentence revealed that Lucian no longer considered the missing agreement an administrative problem. He considered it an opportunity. Darius resigned 2 weeks later. Without the contract, he could not afford litigation. Halberg's attorneys sent him a warning claiming that all designs created inside the workshop belonged to the company. They threatened to sue if he disclosed technical information or approached investors. Darius's wife, Rochelle, was pregnant with their second child. Their mortgage was overdue. His father had recently suffered kidney failure. Darius walked away, not because he accepted the theft, because Lucian understood that a legal battle could destroy Darius before it endangered Halberg Dynamics. For years, Darius worked as a plant safety consultant. He designed improvements for other companies but avoided technologies close enough to the balance lift to provoke another lawsuit. He watched Halberg Dynamics grow into a global empire. Lucian appeared on magazine covers. He received innovation awards. Universities invited him to speak about persistence. The company's official history reduced Darius to a workshop technician. Then even that reference disappeared. Rochelle died 12 years later after a long illness. During her final weeks, she asked Darius why he had never tried again to recover the company. I had no contract, he said. You had the truth. The truth without money loses a lot of meetings. Then wait for the right meeting. The anniversary ceremony was the first time Darius had entered a Halberg building in nearly 3 decades. He did not attend hoping for reconciliation. He attended because Warren Pike had contacted him 2 weeks earlier. Warren was 84 and living in a care facility outside the city. His memory failed unpredictably, but certain events remained painfully clear. I watched you both sign it, he told Darius during their first meeting. The folder disappeared. No. Warren's hand trembled as he reached for a cup of water. Leopold moved it. Where? I don't know. He didn't trust Lucian. Darius leaned forward. Why didn't you tell me before? Warren looked ashamed. Lucian paid my debts. The supervisor's wife had required expensive cancer treatment. After Leopold's death, Lucian offered Warren a private retirement settlement in exchange for signing a statement describing Darius as an employee who developed equipment under company direction. Warren accepted. I told myself the contract was gone anyway, he said. Then Lucian sent me photographs from the anniversary planning. They had removed you from everything. Warren gave Darius a small brass key. Leopold kept an archive inside the old workshop vault. That key opened one of the boxes. The original workshop still existed. Halberg Dynamics had built its modern headquarters around it, preserving the brick structure as a corporate museum. Visitors could see Lucian's first desk, early tools, patent drawings, and the prototype balance lift. The museum description credited Lucian alone. Darius attended the anniversary, hoping to enter the old office and test Warren's key. Security blocked restricted areas before he could reach it. After Naomi Greer followed him outside, Darius did not call her immediately. He returned to Warren's care facility. The old man was awake, watching rain against the window. She refused to shake my hand, Darius said. Warren frowned. Who? Lucian. Recognition returned slowly. He never liked evidence touching him. Darius placed Naomi's card on the table. An attorney says the company's public offering creates leverage. It creates danger, too. What are you afraid of? Warren looked toward the closed door. That Lucian did not destroy the contract because he could not. Why not? His father registered something before he died. Darius waited. Warren struggled to organize the memory. Not the company, the machine, an inventor's declaration. Leopold said Lucian needed to learn that money could own a factory without owning the truth. Where was it registered? I don't remember. Darius called Naomi that evening. She listened as he described the partnership, the missing folder, the brass key, and Warren's testimony. Do not use the key yourself, she said. Why? Because if you enter a restricted archive without permission, Hallberg will call it theft. We need legal access. To a company museum? To the original corporate records inside it. Naomi began with the public offering documents. Hallberg Dynamics declared that Lucian Hallberg was the sole founder and original inventor of the balance lift technology. Investors were told the company possessed an uncontested chain of ownership extending to the first prototype. If Darius's agreement existed, those statements were false. Naomi filed a formal notice with Hallberg Dynamics and the securities regulators, identifying a potential undisclosed founder claim. The company responded aggressively. Lucian's attorneys described Darius as a disgruntled former employee attempting to exploit the public offering. They produced his old employment contract, salary records, and Warren's statement assigning all workshop inventions to Hallberg Industrial Repair. News outlets repeated the accusation. One business commentator called Darius a mechanic seeking a billionaire's reward for doing the job he was paid to do. Hallberg Dynamics suspended the offering temporarily, but insisted it would proceed after a brief review. Lucian gave his first interview about Darius. I remember Mr. Holloway as a capable technician, he said. Many people contributed to our early success. Contribution should not be confused with creation. Darius watched the interview from Naomi's office. He practiced that sentence, he said. Naomi closed her laptop. Good. Why is that good? Because he is committed to a version we can disprove. Their first legal victory came from an unexpected source. A retired patent clerk named Mabel Trent read about the dispute and contacted Naomi. In 1994, she processed an inventor declaration connected to Hallberg Industrial Repair. The declaration named Darius Holloway as primary mechanical inventor and Lucian Hallberg as commercial co-developer. It had been submitted by Leopold Hallberg 11 days before his death. Mabel remembered it because Leopold insisted on filing the document personally despite being visibly ill. The Patent Office archive retained a microfilm copy. The declaration did not prove Darius's ownership percentage, but it destroyed Lucian's claim that Darius had merely followed company instructions. More evidence followed. Bexley Freight's original contract required all technical changes to be approved by lead engineer Darius Holloway. Early prototype photographs showed Darius standing at the controls while Lucian held investor presentations. An audio cassette found among Leopold's possessions contained a meeting where Lucian described Darius as the man who built the machine while I built the market. Lucian's lawyers called the phrase informal. Naomi requested access to the original workshop archive. Hallberg refused. The company claimed the museum contained proprietary records unrelated to the dispute. Naomi petitioned the court for preservation and inspection. The judge granted limited access. Darius returned to the old workshop 30 years after leaving it. The brick walls had been cleaned. The oil stains were gone. His original workbench stood behind glass beneath a plaque reading, "The place where Lucian Hallberg created the future." Darius stared at the words. Naomi noticed. Later, she said. A court-appointed archivist, Celia Morcant, supervised the inspection. Lucian's attorney, Everett Mornay, accompanied them, along with the company's records director. The brass key opened no visible cabinet. They searched Leopold's restored office, the document shelves, and the old mechanical vault. Most records had been catalogued. No red folder appeared. Everett began looking satisfied. "Mr. Pike's memory is unreliable," he said. Darius examined the key again. It was too small for the vault and too long for a desk drawer. He remembered Leopold's habit of hiding important cash inside ordinary machine components because the workshop had been robbed twice. Behind the glass display stood the original H1 prototype control unit. "Open that," Darius said. The records director shook her head. "The prototype is a permanent museum artifact." "The control housing has a service compartment," Everett objected. "The order allows inspection of records, not dismantling machinery." Darius pointed through the glass. That brass plate was not part of the original design. Celia studied the unit. 4 screws held a narrow plate beneath the control panel. The plate appeared old, but its edges did not match the surrounding metal. The judge authorized removal by a neutral technician. Behind the plate was a small keyhole. Warren's brass key fit. Inside the compartment lay a rectangular steel box wrapped in dark canvas. The room became silent. Celia documented every surface before opening it. The box contained the red project folder. Inside was the handwritten partnership agreement bearing Lucian's signature, Darius's signature, and Warren Pike's witness mark. But the folder held far more. There were prototype drawings signed by Darius, financial projections prepared by Lucian, and letters from Leopold warning his son not to remove Darius's ownership. One letter read, "The company may carry our surname because the bank requires it, but the machine carries Darius's mind. If you make his absence convenient, you will have built your fortune on theft." The final document was a formal founder's contract. It had been prepared by attorney Corinne Vossler and signed 3 days before Halberg Dynamics was incorporated. The contract granted Lucian 60% of the company and Darius 40%, matching the handwritten agreement. It also stated that Darius could not be diluted below 25% without his written consent. Darius had never consented. Lucian had filed incorporation documents naming himself sole owner after Leopold's death. Naomi looked at Everett. "Your client did not misunderstand an old promise." Everett said nothing. Celia turned to the records director. "Was this compartment listed in the museum inventory?" "No." "Who authorized the prototype restoration?" The director checked her records. "Lucian Halberg." Lucian had supervised the museum personally 15 years earlier. He knew the prototype contained a locked compartment. Whether he knew exactly what remained inside became the central question. The company's response was immediate. Lucian claimed his father had created the formal contract without his final approval. His attorneys argued that the signature was preliminary and that Darius later abandoned any ownership by leaving the company. The contract contained no abandonment clause. Darius had never transferred his rights. Forensic examination confirmed Lucian's signature was genuine. The ink, paper, and witness records matched the date. Corinne Vossler was still alive. At 81, she testified by video from her home. She remembered preparing the contract because Leopold feared Lucian would attempt to exclude Darius. "Did Lucian understand what he signed?" Naomi asked. "He negotiated every paragraph." "Did Darius resign his ownership when he left employment?" "No, employment and ownership were separate." "Why wasn't the contract reflected in the incorporation filing?" "Leopold died before I could supervise the final registration. Lucian told me both founders had agreed to restructure. I asked for Darius's written approval. It never came." "Did you follow up?" "I received a letter terminating my services." "Signed by whom?" "Lucian Halberg." Warren Pike gave testimony from his care facility. His memory faltered on dates, but he clearly described the signing. "Darius wanted safety control," he said. "Lucian wanted sales control. They argued over the percentage until Leopold told them a company needs the man who knows how to build and the man who knows how to sell. They signed because each thought the other mattered. Why did you later sign a statement calling Darius an employee? Naomi asked. Warren began crying. Because my wife was sick and Lucian knew the exact price of my fear. Lucian's attorneys attempted to exclude the testimony. The court admitted it alongside documentary evidence. Then investigators uncovered deliberate concealment. Emails from the museum restoration showed Lucian instructing workers not to open the prototype's sealed control housing. He described the compartment as containing unstable electrical components, even though the unit had no connected power source. Another email ordered staff to remove Darius from early company photographs before publication. The anniversary film originally contained a 4-second clip of Darius testing the platform. Lucian personally requested that it be cut. He had not forgotten Darius. He had curated his absence. The trial drew national attention. Darius entered the courtroom each morning through crowds of reporters. Lucian arrived through a private underground entrance. During testimony, Lucian maintained that Darius had been important but replaceable. Did you design the synchronization valve? Naomi asked. I participated in its development. Did you calculate the load redistribution sequence? I supervised the project. Can you explain the original pressure balancing mechanism? Lucian looked toward his attorneys. I am not an engineer. Who was? Darius. Who built the prototype? His team. The team consisted of Darius and one apprentice, correct? At first. Who corrected the instability that nearly caused Bexley to reject the system? Darius. Who created the safety lock now used across every Hallberg platform? Darius. Naomi placed the founder's contract on the screen. And when the company was incorporated, who owned 40%? Lucian's voice became quieter. The document says Darius. The document bears your signature. Yes. Yet you told investors you founded the company alone. I carried the financial risk. Did that make his ownership disappear? No. Then what did? Lucian did not answer. Darius testified the following day. Everett Mornay tried to portray him as someone who had waited strategically until the company became enormously valuable. You left Hallberg Dynamics voluntarily, Everett said. I left my job. And made no formal ownership claim for 30 years. I made claims to Lucian before leaving. Not in court. I had 2 children, a pregnant wife, an ill father, and less than $800 in savings. Lucian had a company legal department. So you chose not to fight. I chose not to let his theft make my children homeless. You watched the company grow. Yes. And now that it is worth billions, you want 40%. I wanted 40% when it was worth almost nothing. Everett walked toward the jury. You expect us to believe you built an empire and simply walked away? Darius looked at him. I built a machine. Lucian built the empire by telling everyone the machine came from him. Everett held up a photograph of the anniversary stage. You confronted Mr. Hallberg publicly. I tried to correct a public lie. You wanted to humiliate him. I offered my hand. Did he refuse it because of your race? Lucian's attorneys expected Darius either to make an accusation they could call inflammatory or deny the obvious insult. Darius answered carefully. I cannot tell you what was inside his mind. I can tell you he shook the hands of every wealthy man on that stage. When he reached me, he looked at my work-scarred hand and pulled his back. Everett changed direction. Isn't this case really about that moment? No. What is it about? Darius pointed toward the contract. The moment 30 years earlier when he shook the same hand, signed that agreement, and later decided the promise mattered less because I lacked the money to enforce it. The jury found that Darius was a lawful co-founder of Hallberg Dynamics and that Lucian had fraudulently concealed his ownership. The court restored Darius's original 40% share, subject to adjustments for investments made after his departure. Financial experts calculated that dilution could not reduce his position below the contract's protected 25%. Even at 25%, the stake was worth several $billions. Darius also received compensation for decades of unpaid dividends, but control mattered more than the number. Halberg Dynamics' public offering was canceled. The board removed Lucian as chairman after concluding that his false founder statements exposed the company to enormous liability. Several directors resigned. The official company history was withdrawn. Lucian faced additional investigations for securities misrepresentation, tax reporting, and document concealment. He was not imprisoned, but he paid historic penalties and permanently lost executive authority. After the ruling, cameras waited outside the courthouse. A reporter asked Darius whether he felt victorious. He looked at the crowd. "My wife died believing the truth might never matter," he said. "My father never saw my name restored. Warren spent 30 years ashamed of what fear made him sign. Winning late is not the same as being unharmed." Another reporter asked whether he intended to rename the company. No. Why preserve Halberg? Because Lucian did build part of it. The answer surprised people. Darius continued. The lie was not that he contributed. The lie was that he contributed alone. The company became Halberg Holloway Dynamics. Its new founder display showed both men inside the original workshop. Lucian stood beside financial plans. Darius stood beside the prototype controls. Leopold appeared between them. The restored red folder was placed behind protective glass. The caption did not describe Lucian as a villain or Darius as a symbolic hero. It explained precisely what each man created, what the contract promised, and how the promise was concealed. Darius became executive chairman temporarily but refused to serve as chief executive. "I know machines, safety systems, and operations," he told the board. "A founder who pretends to understand everything is how this company lost its truth." He appointed independent leadership and created a permanent employee invention council. Any worker who developed profitable technology received documented authorship, royalties, and access to independent legal review. He also ordered every historical patent examined. The review identified 17 engineers and technicians whose contributions had been minimized or removed from company publications. Their names were restored. Some received compensation. Several had already died. Their families received letters that avoided the word generosity. The payments were labeled what they were: unpaid recognition and compensation. Warren Pike lived long enough to see Darius's name installed above the headquarters entrance. Darius visited him with a photograph. Warren held it close to his face. "They put you beside him," he said. "They put the truth beside him. Do you forgive me?" Darius sat beside the bed. "You were frightened for your wife." "That is an explanation. Yes. Not forgiveness. Not yet." Warren nodded. A few weeks later, he died. Darius paid for the funeral quietly and attended from the second row. Lucian requested a private meeting 1 year after the verdict. They met inside the original workshop, now closed to visitors for maintenance. The prototype stood where Darius had first assembled it. His old workbench remained behind glass. Lucian appeared smaller, without cameras, assistants, or the authority of a title. "I should have shaken your hand," he said. Darius looked at him. "That is what you came to say?" "I have replayed that moment." "You should replay the signing." Lucian walked toward the prototype. "I believed the company would fail if investors saw divided control. That may have been true at first. I told myself I would restore your share later. Then later became expensive. Yes. You paid Warren. Yes. You removed my name. Yes. You let the world call you the inventor." Lucian looked down. "Yes." Darius waited for an apology. None came immediately. Lucian had spent decades speaking confidently because hesitation allowed others to see weakness. Now every prepared sentence seemed inadequate. Finally he said, "I was afraid that if people understood how much came from you, they would see how little came from me." Darius studied him. You built the market. You found capital. You sold a machine no one wanted to finance. That was not little. It did not feel like enough. So you made me smaller. Lucian nodded. Darius looked toward the company timeline visible through the workshop glass. 2 names now appeared beneath the founding year. I do not know whether I forgive you, he said, but I know what you did no longer controls what people are allowed to remember. Lucian extended his hand. This time Darius did not take it. Not because he wanted to humiliate him, because reconciliation was not a photograph, and a handshake could not repair 3 decades of theft. You wanted my hand when it could help repair your ending, Darius said. You refused it when acknowledging me threatened your story. Lucian slowly lowered his arm. What would make this right? Nothing makes it right. Then what remains? The truth, the company, and what we choose not to repeat. Darius left him beside the prototype. 5 years later, Halberg Holloway Dynamics remained profitable. Its safety division became the largest in the company. Darius personally reviewed major system failures and insisted engineers could halt production without executive permission when equipment posed a risk. At the annual innovation ceremony, young technician Nia Calder introduced a braking sensor she developed after identifying failures in automated freight vehicles. The presenter described it as a Halberg Holloway invention. Darius interrupted from the front row. No, he said. The room became nervous. Darius stood. It is a Nia Calder invention developed at Halberg Holloway. The audience applauded. Nia's name appeared on the patent, the product, and the royalty agreement before the first unit was sold. After the ceremony, she thanked him. You didn't have to correct them publicly. Yes, Darius said. I did. At headquarters, visitors still stopped before the original founder's contract. Some focused on the signatures. Others looked at the photograph of Darius and Lucian standing beside the first machine, young enough to believe ambition and friendship could survive without legal protection. The billionaire had refused to shake Darius's hand because he believed the man in front of him remained the powerless employee who had walked away decades earlier. But the contract proved something Lucian's wealth, films, plaques, and speeches could not erase. Darius Holloway had designed the system that saved the original workshop. He had built the prototype that created the first major contract. He had signed the agreement that formed the company, and his name had not appeared suddenly at the end of Halberg Dynamics' history. It had been there before the empire began,